Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Bloggers Creating Courses. I have the pleasure of hosting Sara Rothschild today. Sara is a brand coach and designer with a wanderlust soul, something we'll dive into a little bit more in a few moments. Before we jump into the episode, the doors are open to the Course Creator Mastermind now. If you are sick of online courses that don't actually help you plan or teach a course, then this is the course for you. During the 12-week program, I walk you through the fundamentals of teaching that can be applied to any niche. People normally need to train for years and pay thousands for this information, and I have condensed it into bite-sized chunks that will have you confidently planning and teaching your course by the end of the program. Doors only open 3 times per year, and I am offering a special discount to the students of this first cohort. Find out more over at veritysongon.com/mastermind. Welcome to Bloggers Creating Courses, the podcast which will take you behind the scenes of creating an online course. I'm your host, Verity Songon, founder and education consultant of veritysongon.com. I'm so excited to help you create an online course that you are proud of and to be part of your journey to scale your business as an online course creator. Let's get into the episode. Sara, thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited to have you here. We are talking about branding and how we can brand your online course and create a digital online brand for our businesses there. But first of all, before we dive into all of that goodness, I'm going to hand across to you. Tell me who you are, what it is you do, and excitingly as well, which country you're in at the moment, because that kind of like links into your story. So tell us about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about all things branding, so I'm so excited to dive in. So my name is Sara. I am a brand coach and designer with a wanderlust soul, as Verity so clearly hinted at. So I really help my clients get really clear on what matters to them and why it's so important. Help them really express their uniqueness and share their stories in a way that lets them start to attract the clients and their people that they really want to be attracting into their world so that they can build a long-term sustainable business. And that's really important to me, and I think really key about those that are ready to focus on building a brand and not just a business, is that they're focused on long-term sustainable business. I think that's such a vital piece. For where I am in the world right now, I am in Ecuador.
I love that so much. Just that, because you were saying, do you want to tell us as well where you're off to next? Because I love this, that I love this idea of
Yeah.
your lifestyle.
Yeah, well, we can totally talk about that too and dive into how that whole thing kind of came to life. I'm here until mid-July. I'm going home for a few months for a friend's wedding. Seems to be the reason I go home, is weddings, or I ended up abroad for 2 years during COVID and coming home for family holidays. So I'm going to go home for a few weeks. Then I'm going to go to Albania, I believe, for probably about like 6 weeks, maybe do a little road trip, and then go to Greece for a digital nomad retreat, which is how I ended up in Ecuador as well, was for a digital nomad retreat.
I love that. It sounds so exciting. It's a million miles away from my life. And I'm a little bit envious, I think, which is probably why I asked you to share all of that goodness about your travels there. I love it. Right, let's dive into branding, because whilst I would love to talk about your digital nomad life, and maybe we get you on to do that at some other point, we are talking about branding today. And as you said, it's so important that we have that idea of a brand versus just a business. So what I'm going to ask first of all is, what does it mean to build a brand, particularly when it comes to an online course and your general digital business as a whole?
Yeah, so the definition of a brand is that like gut feeling someone gets when they interact with you, when they come across something associated with you. It's really that, popular word, and I love this word too, is that overall vibe, right? Like, what is that energy you're getting off of something? And at the end of the day, this is the basis for why people buy. So at the end of the day, people can get information from Google for free. Like, they don't need to go to a course course or coach. I kind of like merged the two words together on that one. But they don't have to go to those things to get the information that they need. They can go to Google, they can go to YouTube, and they can like piece things together. But the reason that they're going to decide to work with you if you're a coach or buy your course is because of how you made them feel, right? You've done the work to build that classic know, like, trust. And you do that through focusing on brand. And that's what brand is. And then branding, the little ing at the end, is that tool that you have to help shape that experience, to help form that vibe and feeling that you want to create. And so that's why it's so, so important as someone in the online space is to get really, really clear on what is that vibe and first impression you want to be making with someone when they come across your page, and how do you want to continue that impression across every touch point they have with you, because that's what's going to make someone buy. It's not always going to happen, like, unless you're selling something that's like $7, right? Unless that's the thing you're selling, it's going to be really hard to get someone to buy from you just like in an instant. And your presence online is how you can make that happen, is how you can have someone interact with something from you, go to your page, learn more about you because you're posting and creating content on a consistent basis that's focused on that vibe that you've decided is what you want to create for someone. That's how you do get someone is like, oh, cool, I like this person. I'm going to go binge their content for like a week and then be like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do. Or I'm going to be slowly creeping on them for a year, 2 years. And that's what's going to make someone buy. So people buy in such different ways that your brand is that tool that's always going to be working for you in the background to get people connected to you and want to buy from you before you ever talk to them.
There's two things that I want to pick up on what you said there. The first thing, which I jotted down, which I find so interesting, is you talking about this constant showing up, because I think out of all of our guests, which we've had so far on the podcast, every single person has said exactly the same thing. It's about the constant, or the consistent, I shouldn't say the constant, the consistent showing up. The constant, don't sit on Instagram all the time, goodness me. But it's that consistency with your showing up and that consistency with your approach. And I think that's so interesting that out of, like I said, everybody, thank you, that out of
She
everybody,
agrees. She's in
she
on
does,
it.
yeah. But out of everybody who has come on the podcast so far, everybody has had exactly the same message. One of the best tools that you've got in your toolkit to getting people into your thing that keeps coming up about getting people into your bubble is about that consistent showing up. And it's one of those things, because so many people say, how much do I need to spend on marketing and on branding? And actually, you don't need to spend anything to consistently show up for your audience. So I find that really interesting. That just seems to be a message which is coming up time and time again. And the other thing that I want to pick up on is how you were saying as well that sometimes people need to engage with your brand and your content for, it could be a week, it could be a couple of months, it could even be a couple of years. Because I think so often we think, right, we're going to throw a couple of Instagram posts out, we're going to do a YouTube video, we're going to do whatever it is that we do. And we kind of start expecting the sales to pour in within maybe a few hours, a few days. But you're right, we need to engage with people. They need to be comfortable with our brand. You think some of the biggest brands on the planet, we've got like ASOS, for example. How many times did we browse the ASOS website before we bought from them? Well, it's because we had to see that advertised. I'm not advocating at ASOS if anyone's thinking that this is a random marketing thing. I'm just using them as an example. But, we see that brand come up time and time again before we think, yeah, that's reputable. That's who we're going to go with. So I think those points are really, really interesting there. The next question, which I'm going to ask you then, is how do you go about creating a vibe or a brand? Because I reckon there are probably some of our listeners who are sitting there now thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to go about creating a brand or a vibe that people want to binge. What's your advice there?
Yeah, for sure. So there's two really important like sides to this, and it's the internal piece. Like, and I'm assuming most of your listeners, if they're building a course, are really focused on more of that personal brand. If that's correct, I hope it is. But we could totally dive into like personal versus more traditional. I'm a firm believer that there's really not a difference. It's just in how you apply the branding strategies. But as a personal brand, especially like in this online space, I think the first step for anyone is getting super clear on what's really important to you and why it's so important to you. So the traditional way of looking at this is like your why, your vision, your mission, and values. But we need to break up with this idea that this is like that those things are just these little statements that you put together and you like throw it on a website, or maybe you like put a post one day like these are my core values. Like, no, we need to break up with that idea. Like, these are things that you need to be embodying. And there's two sides of the coin of even these internal pieces. One, it's an internal compass for you. It's something to help guide you as you look to hire mentors, as you look for your dream clients, as you look to maybe expand your team, as you think of offers you want to be creating. Like, these internal pieces of why things are important to you, what your values are, and why those things are so important to you are going to really help guide you as you start to build and expand your business. And then there's the other side of it where it's how does this help you connect with your audience? So why does your audience care that these things are important to you? So like, how does that affect how you go about your business, and how does that benefit your audience? But your why is one of my favorite things is your why and your values. And I think that's because your why is, again, more than just that paragraph statement of, I love supporting women live their best life. Like, yes, that's so cool. It's a great way to connect with your audience, but your why has to be a lot of things, because when things go shitty in your business, when you're feeling down, hope I can swear, it's okay.
It's fine, don't worry.
If things like just don't feel good in your business, like, you want to want that why to be strong enough and powerful enough that you can lean back on it when, you're getting all you're hearing is no's. Or for example, for me, my laptop broke in a foreign country and it was devastating. Like, but I had my why to be like, no, like, this is why I'm doing this. Like, I believe in this. Like, this is super important to me. So you have to think of these things as internal for you. Sometimes it's going to be things you maybe don't necessarily like share with everyone. And then there's the why and the value pieces that you are going to share a lot, because it really influences how you go about your business and help really formulate that vibe. So that's that first piece. The next piece is market research. So this is digging into who your audience is, what they care about, what's important to them, and why it's important to them. It's doing I like to say, a glance at the competition, because I think as a personal brand, you should really start to view competition as collaboration opportunities. I don't think it's it's not something you want to hone in on, but it's really important to at least get the landscape to understand, like, okay, how are they positioning themselves? How can I position myself differently? And again, it's taking that market research information from knowing your audience, knowing the competition, and knowing what makes you different to help form your unique positioning in the market. So those are the two like beginning pieces. And then we get to the more fun, expressive pieces. How do you want to express all of that information? So that's getting clear on the personality you want to be bringing to the table. What opinions and point of views do you hold? What language do you want to be using? And then once you get that part of the expression down, that verbal expression, so using that information to nail down your messaging, the stories that you want to be sharing, because storytelling is huge. We can totally dive into that. That could be a whole podcast in itself. Then you get to go to that visual expression, and the visual expression should be a translation of all of that strategy work that you've done. And I'm just going to give a little plug here that design is probably the most underutilized thing right now, because everyone is diving into Canva and they are using the same things that everyone else is using. And it's this whole like unused, untapped resource for you to instantly stand out and become remembered and recognized. So I will always like give design its little plug. And I think for those that are feeling like this industry is really saturated, like really think about how storytelling and design can totally take you to a whole other level, because your stories are yours and super unique. Like, no one else is going to have your story in the way you tell them. And design is such a way to instantly stand out from what's going on. So that was just big overview of what exactly goes into this. But yeah, I'd love to kind of see what you're thinking? Like if there's anything that popped out of like, ooh, what does that mean? Or like anything you want to dig into more?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that I want to just comment on is that I think that's really interesting what you were saying about diving onto Canva, because I think we, so many people, when they think about branding, the first thing, if you're anything like me, is you think about is the colors and the fonts and what kind of pretty pictures can we get off of Unsplash or Pexels or Pixabay, whatever we're using. But actually, I was having a conversation with somebody literally just an hour ago about how we can use Canva in a way which doesn't make us look like we have, and I'm not knocking Canva. I love Canva. I am on it literally every single day. It was probably the best subscription I've ever bought for my business. Oh my God, I love Canva. But there's a way to use Canva, I think, and this is what I was talking to somebody else about, like I said, just an hour ago, is there's a way to use Canva so it doesn't look like you've just gone on there, picked a template. And there's nothing wrong with just going on and picking a template, but there is a way of doing it so that it doesn't look like you have just done, just grabbed a template, shoved some colors on it and thrown it out there. Because there's a difference between doing that and, as you said, actually creating a brand and creating a vibe. And what I love that you're saying as well is that you didn't even start talking about the, like I said, the colors and the story and all that kind of thing until like piece 3 of those steps that you just went down. And I think that goes to show that there is just so much that we need to think about when we think about the whole branding story before colors. Because if you're anything like me, somebody says branding to me and I'm like, oh, what colors can I use? What pictures can I use? But as you said, it's about the story. It's about that mission and vision and all the rest of it. So if somebody is thinking to themselves, actually, I'm exactly like Verity and I have just jumped straight on Canva and I've started deciding I'm going to pick out colors, how would you suggest that somebody actually potentially backpedals a little bit and sorry, I can't talk. How would you suggest that somebody backpedals a little bit and thinks about creating that story before they get into, I guess, what people might think is the fun bit of the branding? How would you suggest that they start on the story first? How might that look?
Yeah, I think it's really asking themselves, like, what is that vibe I want to create? What is that first impression I want people to have? What are the feelings and emotions I want to evoke when someone sees my stuff? When someone comes across my Instagram page, my website, wherever it is, wherever you're kind of letting your brand live, what is that feeling you want people to get? And I think that comes from understanding who your audience is and what that difference is that you bring, and not just knowing the difference, but specifically how it benefits your people. So that's that key piece right there. Is a lot of times in the online space, people are like, you are the brand, just show up and be yourself. And yes, that's super important. Like the whole authenticity thing is really popular to throw out there. Again, a whole other topic we could dive into, something I have a lot of opinions on.
I want to quickly interrupt this episode to tell you about the Course Creator Mastermind. The Mastermind helps you create, grow, and scale your online course. Consider this as a new way to learn to build an online course and to teach online. Included in the Mastermind is a self-paced online course with actionable step-by-step lessons for you to implement. Lessons which are based on teaching theory and taught by someone with teaching qualifications and experience. There's an exclusive Facebook group where you will be involved in a community of like-minded individuals. You'll have access to 8 live classes with me, Verity Songon, where you can ask me anything about creating an online course. Each class will have a different focus to help you create, grow and scale your online course, as well as a live Q&A session. Within the mastermind, you will have access to a self-paced online course with lifetime access, email support from me, 8 weekly group mentoring sessions with live Q&A, an exclusive one-to-one mentoring call, an online course audit, peer feedback session. I only open the doors to this mastermind a few times a year. This is limited and I only take 20 people per cohort. So make sure you're signed up soon to avoid disappointment. Go to veritysongon.com/mastermind or click the link in the show notes to enroll today.
But that's definitely, something in the realm people like to talk about. So I think, yeah, it's getting super clear on those stages that I talked about. So, what's really important to you and why, who your audience is and what's important to them and why, and then how you can uniquely support them and how it benefits them. And then you get to throw in your personality and your uniqueness and your unique way of sharing things. But I think we like to jump in to that expression piece really quick. And that's where you can get into this struggle of maybe trying to be too cute with things or speaking in a way that is like so, I don't know, like overthought that your audience doesn't understand it. So there's like this fine line between using your creativity, but still making sure the point is clear. Like we need to make sure that as soon as someone comes across you, they understand what you're about. And then your messaging, the content you're creating gets to be really fun and expressive. Like if you're really sassy, like go all in on being really sassy. If you're like really warm and calm and inviting, like do that, be that, and like let people into your world. So I think that's really important as you start to build a brand before you ever get to the design part is get really clear on those foundational pieces so that when you move into the design, you're seeing it already. Like you get to see how this translates. So that's my recommendation. Really dig into those foundations first.
I love that. And I am going to pick up on what you said about authenticity as well, because you're right. We hear this so much. Be authentic, be yourself. You are your face of your brand. Just, yeah, just be yourself, really. But what does that mean? And how would you recommend to people that they do keep that authenticity and that authentic voice when they're creating their brand?
Yeah, so I think it's like this nice little buzzword that everyone likes to throw out, and again, everyone loves to be like, "Just show up and be yourself," but that takes out the intentionality and strategy of how you actually connect with people. And I did an Instagram live about this the other day, is specifically around content creation, is the idea of like, when I have a strategy for my content, it burns me out. It's not really fun. It's not exciting. It's not inspired. So I kind of throw out my strategy and just create in flow. But then I'm creating in flow, but there's no real results. I'm just kind of posting when I want to post. And there's this balance you have to create. So I think it's really important when you're building your brand is again, you have to be connected to it. You have to actually believe in the things you're saying. And that's why I talked about in the beginning about the like meaning behind your brand is to think about things you actually like give a fuck about. Like you have to actually care about this thing. And it's okay like if like for example, part of my why like why I do what I do is because financial freedom and location independence are so important to me. That's something I share with my audience because I think that's something they can relate to as well, but it's something again that I'm so passionate about, it's going to keep me going. So you have to actually really genuinely care about these things. And so when you build that strategy out, it feels like more of an extension of who you are and what you care about. So that it doesn't feel like you're just pandering to people and you're just trying to say things because you think that's what they want to hear. It's things that you genuinely believe in, and you've done the research to understand that these things are important to your audience as well. So it's understanding that intersection of what's important to you and what's important to your audience and showing up and highlighting those things. But again, once you build the strategy and you're again truly connected to it and can like really embody those things that you're talking about because it's something you would talk about to someone whether they were paying you or not, that's when you get to show up and be yourself and just show up and express it because you genuinely believe in it and you know how it's going to benefit your audience. So that's what I truly believe in is again, authenticity is about showing up and doing what you say you're going to do and doing it again right back to the beginning, that consistency piece, right? That's why that consistency is so important is because people can trust that you're going to keep showing up in that way. You're not going all over the place. You're not constantly changing. Like let people know what they're going to get from you from the beginning and keep giving them that. And we can get into how you pivot and whatever and like how you can still show up for people even if you decide to change the direction. Like that's not what I'm saying. It's not that you can't ever change, but being able to show up consistency is so powerful.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm going to what really stood out for me there as well is that authenticity it comes in full circle essentially to what you were saying right at the beginning. Step one, what is your mission? What's your vision? What are your goals? You can't be authentic without knowing what that is, because those are tied into your audience and who you're interacting with. So then, like I said, you can't be authentic without having that information, which I think goes back to the point of what you were saying, is that before you kind of get into the maybe the slightly more creative part of branding, you've got to do that homework beforehand. You've got to know, who are you targeting and what is your business about. I love that. It's such a fresh approach to thinking about branding, because as I said, I think that we've got to get over this idea that branding is just about colors and pictures and what have you. So what are, if you had to maybe pick just a few, like maybe 3 top tips for building an online brand, what would they be?
Yeah, and I think this is probably me like getting a little bit repetitive, but like getting super clear on what's important to you and why it's important to you and how that integrates into how you teach and how you go about things. Like get super clear on that. Knowing your audience extremely well, always going to be a vital piece, because at the end of the day, that's who this brand is for. That's who you have to, really be connecting with and inspiring to work with you. Like, so they have to be at the center of what you're creating. And then the last piece I would say is storytelling. Stories are going to be how you can really connect with your audience on a deeper level, how you can become remembered, because that's how humans remember things, is storytelling. So getting super clear on the story you want to create. And at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that your brand as a whole is the story. Like, you are creating this epic story that you're going to like slowly reveal chapter by chapter, like page by page to people. So you really are crafting this overall epic tale that you're going to continually share with people. So yeah, those would kind of be the 3 pieces. And my last thing is, don't touch design until you're clear on those things, because otherwise, like, again, I said it before, but design has such an opportunity to be a really strategic client attraction tool for you. And if you do it in the right way, where you work on these other pieces before you dive into that, that's when it gets to be that for you. So I guess that was 4 tips, but yeah, that would be my
That's
kind of
okay. We'll
overall.
we'll take the extra tip. We will always take the extra tip over here. There's one other thing that I want to ask you, and it's possibly quite, I don't know. I'm just going to come out and I'll just ask it.
Yeah.
For this question, what a lot of online course creators have probably noticed is that a lot, or a number of bloggers, have got different courses which all seem to be branded quite differently. Because what they might find is that they've got maybe their signature program, but then they've also got a skill in a different area, doesn't quite fit their business ethos, so they've gone down a slightly different branding route, maybe even have a different URL or something for that course. If somebody is thinking that they are creating a course which doesn't fit maybe their first branding or the original branding they've got for their first course, what would you suggest to them? Would you suggest that, yeah, they do go down a slightly different branding route, or stick with the brand that they've got? Or it might be a bit of a hybrid answer of the both there. I'm interested to know what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, so I'm going to say it depends. That's going to be my answer. So again, it
This is the
really,
best
like,
answer.
if your audience is the same, and like the overall thing that you're creating still fits, like, for example, I'll put out different offers. Maybe it's like content creation specific. Maybe it's like a design specific one, but it still falls under brand. So I know like business coaches put out different offers all the time. It's like how to sell really well, how to become an authority, how to create content. Like, they each have different things, and all those, offers, it might not necessarily be a course, it might be a group program, have slightly different branding, but it's all under that bigger umbrella and it fits fine. So unless your audience is really different and why they're coming to you is like completely different, then it's okay to keep things under the same overarching brand, and you can just have maybe individual branding for those individual courses. If like all of a sudden, first you were catering to like moms and fitness, and now you're catering to like millennials building a business, that's when you would want something separate. Or maybe it's that you're pivoting from the two, so you rebrand. So that's kind of, I think, again, when I said like the audience is so important, I think if your audience is changing drastically, that's when either rebrand or a separate brand should be considered. But again, like you need a lot of information. You kind of need to see all of the parts and kind of see, okay, like how does this fit in? Does it strategically make sense? Does this audience still going to resonate with the things that I'm sharing for this new offer? So that's why it can be, I wouldn't say one's right or one's wrong. It's just you kind of need to look at the full like picture of what you're trying to create, and does it still fit with the overarching brand, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And again, it comes back to this really, really key point that you said just right at the beginning there of making sure that you have got it clear in your mind. What is your vision? What is your mission? What is it that you are putting out there? And what is it that you want your audience to resonate with you? And I think that is such a key theme for this episode, is essentially do your homework before you try and do anything else when it comes to branding. And you're smiling, so I'm sure that is a good message there for me
Yes.
for us to take away there and to pick up on. So that then brings me on, because we've talked about so much in this episode, and I think that some people are just going to have like notes and notes and notes. I know I would. So what would be your key takeaway for listeners from this episode?
I would say really be connected to and care about what you're sharing. Because I think, again, when I said in the beginning, like you want to build a brand, not just a business, but even more than that, you want to build your life, not just a business. And that's something I've been really preaching a lot lately, is figure out what's important to you and why, so you can structure your business in a way that lets you build the life that you want. So for me, that means finding ways to create offers and showing up in a way that lets me live the lifestyle I want to live, and like not letting my business run my life. Like, so I think that's why getting really connected and really caring about what you're sharing and believing in it is so powerful and important on so many different levels. So I think that's really important. And then again, doing that market research, really understanding who it is you're trying to speak to. Again, I don't want people to go crazy. It's not like you have to interview 100 people, but like be intentional about this. Like do it. Like I do market research all the time just by having conversations with people in the DMs, like starting conversations, seeing where they're at, and using that information to influence the message that I'm sharing that day. So you can always be doing market research to refine your message, but in the early stages, it's super important so that you set that right foundation. So those would be the two things. Really connect to what you care about, embody it, and then do that market research so that you can literally stop guessing and know exactly what your audience is needing.
I love that. So much value. Thank you so much. Well, where can our listeners find out more about you if they want to get in contact and find out more about your programs and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Solo Boss Design Co. And I actually just launched a free Facebook group where I'm going to be doing a free training every other week. So if you want to dive into more things, the first one is going to be next week, and we're going to be talking about how to tell your story to attract dream clients. So that's going to be the first training. I'm not sure when this podcast will come out, but yeah, if you guys want more support, that's where a great place to go. And then just the other day, I started getting on TikTok. So if anyone's on TikTok, giving that a go. And that is a place where you have to be super consistent. So showing up on there and creating as many videos as possible. But yeah, Instagram is great. You can find the link to the Facebook group in there. Or if it's not there by the time this comes out, you can always DM me for it.
Fantastic. And I'm going to link all of that in the show notes as well. So it's super easy to find you. And we just need to hit those links for anyone who wants to find out more about you there. Right. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. There has been so much value and content from this episode. I've had so much fun, and happy travels, I suppose, with where you're going on to next. And thank you.
So much fun. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Bloggers Creating Courses. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, leave a rating and a review. Ratings and reviews help us to reach more people who want to build and scale their online course, so you're really helping to widen the support for our blogging community. To catch all of the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram @VeritySongon. I'll see you next time. Happy content creating.